friends, fellow Singaporeans, thank you all for coming for this rally for the SDP team for the Holland Bukit Timah GRC. I'm going to talk this evening about why I joined the SDP and why I'm here asking for your votes. As you know, I'm a medical doctor and a professor at the university. I have a relatively comfortable life, a happy marriage, work that's rewarding. I enjoy teaching, research, looking after patients in a public hospital. However, in the course of my work, I've encountered many patients who have suffered unnecessarily because of the high cost of healthcare in Singapore. We have some of the best doctors, nurses, and allied health professionals in the world. We have excellent facilities, we have access to really good drugs, but unfortunately, our healthcare financing system is based on some very questionable moral assumptions. The PAP-led government does not appear to understand or want to understand that very few people choose to be sick. Most of us, if we had a choice, would rather not get cancer, chemotherapy, or surgery for any other reason. We try very hard to look after our own health, but our genes and our environment are beyond our control. The current healthcare system, which demands heavy co-payments and high deductibles, punishes people who are sick for no fault of their own. It is obsessed with the bottom line. There are many managers who, every time you try and introduce a new clinical service, they ask for a business plan. That is not their fault. They are merely agents of a system which demands financial accountability as its overarching goal. Now, I used many occasions, forums, discussions, feedback sessions to bring my concerns to many in the Ministry of Health. In fact, the previous health minister, Mr. Khaw Boon Wan, once said that the first doctor to post on his MOH Facebook page was me. But all I got was polite responses, occasional comments about limitations, and finally I realized the only way to really make a change was through the political system. And we know this to be a fact, because it's only through parliamentary questions that we know that MediShield is probably the world's most profitable public health insurance system if you go in terms of the medical loss ratio. So I decided I had to get involved in politics. Now, in terms of politics, I had to choose a political party. Some of my friends even suggested I could try joining the PAP and try and change them from within. But you know, that's frankly, I think you all know, that's kind of impossible. It's too big and too monolithic. Amongst the alternative parties, however, the SDP had the most clearly defined political philosophy. The SDP believes in a democratic society based on justice and equality. Those are values which are very dear to me. These are values that I was brought up with. Both my parents felt very strongly about social justice. My father, who passed away in 2011, was a highly respected doctor, well loved by his patients, both rich and poor. He had strong views about the privatization of healthcare in Singapore. My mother, who is 78 years old, remains an active volunteer and a tireless advocate for the rights of children with disabilities. She continues to campaign for compulsory education for children with disabilities, which is something that the parents of these children want, because they know that unless these children are educated to the best of their abilities so that they can look after some of their activities of daily living, they'll be in deep trouble once their parents pass away. So I wrote to Dr. Chee Soon Juan and met up with him a few years ago and started attending some SDP events. I found out the SDP is not some huge, big political machine, but rather a small band of dedicated volunteers, some of whom you see here. They believe in a better Singapore. The SDP has taken a stand in support of the rights of marginalized communities in Singapore, and Dr. Chee has spoken out on many unpopular issues, such as civil liberties, as well as bread and butter issues, such as returning our CPF. The SDP views education, healthcare, retrenchment insurance as investments in the people of Singapore, not welfare dished out by some natural aristocrats to undeserving masses. These views resonated with me. I do not think that the people of Singapore want handouts. They want to have the dignity of strong safety nets which allow us to pursue our own dreams. Thus, I became more involved with the SDP. As many of you know, in 2011, I was invited to speak as a guest speaker at the SDP rallies, and I spoke at the Boat Quay rally. Thank you. That rally was videotaped by one of my former students, and she put it online, and it went viral very quickly. I received many expressions of support from those within the medical community, but also expressions of concern. Friends and colleagues were worried that I would lose my job, or worse, every time I went to Mount Elizabeth to visit a friend, somebody would say to me, "Oh, they finally sacked you, and you're here looking for a clinic." I actually had some very good conversations with the leaders in NUS, and they were very supportive. They reassured me that the university believes in academic freedom, and as long as I stuck to the issues, I would be fine. The following year, I was involved in developing the SDP National Healthcare Plan. This was published in 2012, and I was one of those who presented it. And as you know, that plan is pretty critical of the healthcare financing system in Singapore. The year after that, in 2013, I was put up for promotion. And to a lot of people's surprise, I was promoted to full professor with tenure. And I think that is a very strong signal that Singapore today is a changed place. The knuckle duster era is over. Singaporeans can feel free to speak up without fear of the kind of drastic actions that happened in the past. Just look at this election. Roy Ng is speaking in Clementi Stadium. Han Hui Hui has been speaking in Delta. Those two would never be allowed to speak a few years ago. Things have changed. After my promotion, I continued to help out in SDP activities. I participated in some of the ground operations when they visited people in Sembawang, in Bukit Panjang. And of course, now you know Sembawang has been split in two, so they continued in Marsiling UT. I also helped out in some of the other policy papers. I had a chance to, especially on the education paper, I had a chance to read and comment on some of the others, and I found that they were well-reasoned and carefully put together. There were many experts who helped us, some of whom were too shy to come forward. One of them who was not was Dr. Yo Lam Keong, former chief economist of the GIC. And these strengthened my conviction that the SDP was the right party for me, a social democratic party that was constructive, compassionate, and competent. The biggest issue that many people, including many of those in my family, had with me joining with SDP was the version of the history of the SDP that they had heard through the mainstream media. And I think Brian has talked a bit about this in Chinese. The narrative said that there was once a nice, gentle party led by Mr. Chiam that got taken over by a madman and became radicalized into the personal kingdom of Dr. Chi. When I first met Dr. Chi in person, I was stunned to discover that he was nothing like the picture that was painted by the mainstream media. He was just an ordinary, decent guy with a deep passion for Singapore and for Singaporeans. This has come through in the social media era that we live in today, where we don't have to depend on the mainstream media. Social media has got pro, it's got con, it's got the crazy people, it's got the very logical and sane people, and you can hear and decide for yourself. That's what democracy is all about. Taking the evidence, listening to different views, and making a decision, because you're adults. You can make a decision for yourself. And I think those of you who were there at Pitter Road last night at Bukit Panjang really got a flavor of who the man really is. Sure, he's made mistakes. In particular, he made some political mistakes early on in his career, but all of us have. Even the Prime Minister in the last general election made a very public apology, and some people think he's going to make another apology in the next few days. Dr. Chi has picked himself up again and again, and ably supported by his wife May, has come out stronger for each blow that he suffered. I am proud to be part of the Holland Bukit Timah team that he is leading. The main reason I'm part of this team, however, is because of the fundamental difference between the SDP and PAP. We trust the people of Singapore. We know that we are an educated and hardworking people. No matter how hard the PAP tries to divide or belittle ourselves, we can make our voices heard. We can be trusted with our own money. I'm nearly 55 years old. In a few years' time, most of us who are 55 will have our own families, careers, and it's a real insult to tell us that we can't manage our own money. Every month, we put aside a significant portion of our money, and we were promised that at age 55, we could take it out we could invest it in some annuity, or we could spend it on a lifelong dream. And now we're told we cannot be trusted. Just because there are a couple of people who have blown their money on wine, women, and karaoke, and they now have to depend on their children. No, they don't depend on the government. In Singapore, nobody depends on the government. So why should all the rest of us be punished by the government retaining our CPF money? That's not right. Our CPF money is our money. The SDP has proposed that individuals who want to leave their money in CPF for the stable returns can do so. The rest of us could take it out for some lifelong dream or could invest in an annuity. So we are adults. Please tell the PAP to stop treating us like children. You need voices in Parliament who can do that for you. And we need to look after ourselves as the cost of living is increasing astronomically. Most of our children will never be able to dream of the kind of life that we live. When I tell the junior doctors that in 1992, a few months after my ORD, my wife, who was a senior tutor in NUS at the time, and myself were able to buy a 1,600 square foot freehold apartment in Farrer Road, without any loans from our parents. They look at me as though I come from another planet. It's just not possible to do that nowadays. The massive influx of high net worth individuals engineered by the PAP government has priced middle-class young people out of the housing market. And that's for doctors. What about the average Singaporean without a medical degree? The price of HDB flats is now so high that young people have to both keep working at their jobs for years just to ensure they have enough CPF to pay the mortgage on their flats. And these flats are located far away from their workplaces. This leads to additional costs for childcare and reliance on a transportation system which cannot cope with a massive influx in population. In addition, if one of their parents or a child is sick, they have to worry about the extremely high healthcare costs. That's why the public housing needs to be seen once again as a roof over our heads, not as an asset for speculation. That's what the SDP's public housing plan is all about. Finally, this election is not just about dollars and cents. As many have pointed out, this election is about choosing people with the right values. I totally agree with that. None of us is perfect, but each of us has a set of values that came to us from our families, our friends, our schools, our religions, and our experiences. To me, the most important values are placing people first, placing people over profits, placing people over personal gain. I was very troubled when I read a report from our worthy opponent in the Holland Bukit Timah constituency, Minister Vivian Balakrishnan. Don't boo, don't boo. I just want to be 100% accurate, so I'll read out the correction published in the Today newspaper this week. This is from Dr. Vivian Balakrishnan, open quotations. Tell me who can afford to work for you for zero. There are people who can afford to work for you apparently at zero. There are two kinds of people who can provide you services apparently at zero. Number one, I'm already very rich, my bank account is full, I come back, I tell you I want to serve. Other kind of person, why will that person actually cost more? The word is called corruption. That is the word, end quote. Now that kind of value that demands that ministers be paid high salaries or else they will become corrupt disturbs me and many Singaporeans too. Singapore has many wonderful volunteers who help out in many social services. My mother is one of them. She has not been paid a cent for the work she's done for more than 40 years in AWA. And we are not wealthy. We're comfortable, but not wealthy. The volunteers in the SDP who put flyers in people's mailboxes, do house visits, set up the perambulators, work behind the scenes at the merchandise stall, they are not wealthy, and they're certainly not corrupt. They do it because they, like so many of you Singaporeans, believe in our country. We know that we are not a corporation, although the world sometimes calls us Singapore Incorporated. We are a nation, one united people, striving to build a democratic society based on justice and equality. That is what this election is about, choosing the right people with the right values. people who care about Singapore and Singaporeans. We launched our campaign in January. We want to have a good, clean campaign, one that allows Singaporeans to make decisions on the issues. We trust the people of Singapore to make a choice that is good for ourselves and our children. We hope that you will let us be your voice in Parliament. Thank you.